You know, certain films in the Criterion collection are just absolutely essential. The topic is just too important. The subject matter, the record, the recorded history is so important. And they're also great films. So they're great films with great topics that are important to us. And this is the case with Not a Pretty Picture from 1975, directed by Martha Coolidge. Before I go any farther with this, I need to say that this is a difficult, challenging film, and it's about SA, okay? It's going to have triggers, so I wanted to throw that out there for anyone who has ever been a victim, because the whole film is about two survivors, and the way it's structured and set up. So Martha Coolidge experienced a rape, an assault, and she wanted to capture some of that reality on film, okay? And what she did was she had another young woman come in, Michelle Manenti, who also experienced a sexual assault. And and she played like a younger version of her, sort of, in this kind of film that they're making. And so the film that we're seeing is almost like a play within a play, so to speak, because we're seeing that process play out. And so it's dealing in kind of an experimental, sort of semi-documentary format that very purposefully breaks that fourth wall to great effect. And I also wanted to say something about this film before I talk any more about it. I was excited by the craftsmanship of this film, the ingenuity, the creativity of it. So I had a very mixed feeling watching this. On one hand, it is an incredibly difficult film that I paused at least 20 times. I'm not joking. Like, I had to pause it a bunch. I had to stop and think and give myself a minute because it's obviously the subject matter. But on the other hand, it is important to note that when I watch this, there is some humor, and there is some, there are some moments that aren't so bleak. And like I said, the actual work and of the director, this isn't just a film that has a good message. It's a film that's like crafted really well. Okay, it is a film that shows signs to me of a director who had a lot more experience than this one. I said when I was making notes that I really wanted to focus on something that I think frames the entire film. Okay, so early on, we have a shot, just very early on. We hear this woman singing. Her song sounds a little innocent, yet a little as if she has lived and aged a long time. This is before anything happens, okay? But the way that this scene is shot, and this is important for the rest of the film, she's kind of at a distance, and we get more of like the backs of these two guys that are kind of whispering and clowning around and like poking at each other. And from the very beginning, that camera is sort of menacing. It's kind of intimidating because of the way that's shot. And later in the film, and as the film goes along, the camera is just so intrusive and like up in the face of the characters. It's uncomfortable, even gross at times. Like, it's not quite like extreme close-ups or anything, but it just feels like it's a little too close on purpose. That's a purposeful tool that the director used that I don't know if everybody who's ever watched it would pick up on. But I was watching it and I was thinking, like, the choices and how to film this, there's another part of this that I think is just brilliant. And like I said, I don't know how much of this is reality versus, a recreation of what had happened. And I don't know the exact lines of that, but there's like this, there's like these two rooms when she's filming a scene, right? And there's like a hole in the wall, right? And that hole in the wall separates the room, and the one room from the other, and obviously, like, it's just this insignificant, like, torn out hole in the wall, and it makes the whole thing a little bit more scary and real, and as if this could happen to anyone, because it does. And part of the reason I wanted to make this video was I don't want people to just think that this is like, if you've read about this film or you've put off watching it, I don't want you to think that it's just, a film that's famous for being about important subject matter. It's also just a really well-made film. It rises above, for me, what like a typical documentary might. Okay, it is that substantial as a piece of filmmaking. I think also, since it's only 80 some minutes of runtime, it's under 90 minutes. Early on, we get the first indication of what's about to happen, and then she will break and she'll give these moments for these actors to talk through what they're experiencing as actors. And it's not always what you would expect. And sometimes it gives us a moment to laugh, which we need. Okay, this is a difficult film. We need the laughter. We need the time to pause and process what we're hearing. But there's this one scene. There are a series of scenes, but let me kind of paraphrase it. Like, the guy who's going to do the thing, they're rehearsing, right? Like how they're going to actually represent that on film as actors. And he says something along the lines of, well, I'm probably being a little bit too nice about this because the guy I'm playing would not be be playing these nice little games, that kind of thing. Like I'm really paraphrasing that so that you'll be able to experience it for the first time. But they deal with, like, as actors, what level of emotion am I actually giving off? Like, is this convincing? Is this powerful enough? Or is this real enough? Is it authentic enough? And that whole part of the film is also very fascinating because it's a great exploration of the process of filmmaking, and a process that I'm sure actors go through. And it just this creative process, it's really fascinating on that level. Okay. The idea that this filmmaker had the wherewithal and was adroit in that sense to know that this film could be universal in that way, right? It could deal with acting and directing and filmmaking as a greater whole. So the next time I see one of these lists that's like, what are the greatest movies about movies? Boogie Nights, 8.5. I'm going to be talking about Not a Pretty Picture, because it is. It's a great movie about the process of making movies in the artistic process. And along those lines, something that is important and is really just vital to understanding the theme of this film. And I really hope no one ever goes through what these women went through. It's so awful. But everybody who's being creative, okay? A lot of you are creative that watch this channel. I don't know how many of you might make your own films or short films, or you draw, you do art. Some of you I know are writers. And whatever creative craft you're dealing with, okay? If you've ever done something creative and substantial and it's taken you a while, and you have to kind of dig at the most painful moments of your own existence or someone you know's existence, you've had to watch them go through that, it's challenging. I'm working on a writing project right now where I'm having to face some really, really tough stuff from my past. Not what these women went through. Do not mistake what I'm saying. What these women went through was just so hard and so difficult. But I have faced difficulties, and working through that in the creative process, that part of the film is so universal to me. Anybody who's ever, created a lovely piece of, a painting, a poem, anything creative in the arts can probably relate to that piece. And again, that's not a thing that's just listed for you. It's something that you come to realize as you watch it. You know why? Because it's a great film about the creative process. It's not just a great film about something that's inherently disturbing and difficult to watch. It's a great film about so much more than that. And sometimes with these kind of films, those ideas get lost. They get lost because of the difficult subject matter. Now, to speak about the difficult subject matter, I do want you to know what you're getting into. If you have never seen it, you will be watching in the way that the film does this. It's kind of cool how it does it, because it's, like I said, it's part documentary sort of, and it's part like narrative as they're filming it or whatever. But there's the before the act, how the act kind of builds, and you kind of are able to see that in terms of foreshadowing and stuff. Again, that camera, those shots that are kind of creepy and disturbing. And then you're able to you watch a lot of the basically how the act kind of plays out. I think there is a real fine line in how much needed to be shown to still give effect and impact. and how much needed to be omitted for the sake of just, you know, being respectful of what happened. And it's perfect. Like the amount that is shown to us and how it's shown to us and what we hear and what we see is just perfect. Like I was so impressed with how this filmmaker was able to do that. And you see her reactions to a lot of what's going on, and it will cause you to pause and appreciate just how gutsy, just how like brave, the bravery of this film. Just I'm so impressed by it, you know? And you know, how many times have women created great films like this? You know, I was thinking about Compensation the other day, Zinabu Irene Davis's wonderful film that's in the collection. You know, I was thinking about Chantal Akerman, and there's a scene very early in this that reminded me a little bit of Akerman. And just like women deserve just like this respect from these great directors who made these great films. And I was so impressed, and I just genuinely don't know how the actress and the director did that. Who's sort of an actress herself, right? Because she's filming herself, like directing with it. So it's kind of you'll see. I'm making it sound more complicated than it is. It's so seamless and flawless, but also the reactions of the other women, I think, are very telling. You know, a lot of the guys act about how I would have expected them to, but some of the women, you know, really, they're kind of nasty and how they approach the whole topic. And you know, there's one part where the actor, he says, part of why we're doing this film is some men just need to be educated, and I really do think that. As you're watching it, you really do learn just more about the topic in general, and the dialogue can be quite frank. And the version I watched on the Criterion channel bleeped out a few words, and I think I know what they were, but I understand why they were bleeped out. I don't know if that's I don't know if that was a choice from the director, if that's from the channel. I don't really know why some of that was censored, but it might have just been in the original film, and that didn't bother me really. But the way the dialogue feels so authentic to me, and it feels like young people and adolescence that happens here. And then, you know, in the case of the 21-year-old man, it sounds like how that character would have acted. And sometimes, like I said, it's kind of funny, kind of like almost like a comedy with the way it's set up. But then there are those really tragic elements and the aftermath of how this woman, you know, there's a loneliness. Okay. And the loneliness that these women, both of these women who were victims, surely felt. That is just perfectly portrayed through like two scenes. There are two scenes in here. They're kind of the after the fact that just like, I was like, that's so perfect. Like showing and demonstrating how these women must have felt. And I got to tell you something. I know I've kind of said this already, but like, I finished watching this thing, and I've been thinking about it, and I genuinely was just inspired. Like here are some people who experience just these awful, terrible things, and you know, these lifelong scars that they have to live with, and they come out and they make this film, and not only does it just show their perseverance and their talents, but also like it's gotta help somebody, you know? It's one of those things that like I felt inspired by it. I felt like I knew more, I understood more, I saw some perspectives I hadn't thought of. And for anyone who's been through that, who maybe sees it, like what that has to do for that person. And that is why I make my videos. You know, and that is why I think the older I've gotten, the less I've liked like escapist cinema, because I really love it when people can take their lives, good, bad, ugly, and they can throw it all out there, put it all on the line, and give us a great piece of cinema. That is what movies are to me. There's so much more than just, you know, images that are there to try to give you a chuckle for $20 at the movies, right? They're these images that last a lifetime, that are timeless, just like this film. is. And so if you haven't watched this, but you've heard of it and you've put it off, because I put this off. For whatever reason lately, I've been going through all the films I ever put off, and it's been rough. Umberto D really messed with me. That was a great film. I've been putting off some films, but I'm challenging myself to look at some of this tougher stuff with tough subject matter that's well known, and embrace it. It is not 80 some minutes of misery, okay? It's not. It is a thoughtful, poignant exercise in filmmaking. And I thought, I think as a almost 40-year-old male, like, it's important for other men, I think, to see that these topics matter. These topics matter. And I hope that the film will create a greater sense of understanding and empathy, and that I'm sure it has. I mean, it's been around since the 70s, and that more folks will see it. But really, like, if you do watch it, do understand the triggers are pretty significant. The violence, even though it's acted out, even within, like, she's sort of filming it, it's difficult to watch, okay? And take pauses, take breaks, like, take some time. And if you don't finish it, you don't finish it because it's hard. I totally get that. But I think if you feel like it's something that you can handle, or maybe you can't yet, maybe you have to wait some time to do it. Maybe it's something that you couldn't watch the whole thing the first time. I just encourage you to consider watching the film, because I know that not everybody will be able to watch it. I don't know if I'll be able to watch it twice. There are scenes I could watch again. Like I said, some of the lighter stuff I could watch again, but I don't know. I don't know if I could watch it again. So I wanted to throw out, I know this is kind of almost sounds like a philosophical ramble at this point if you're still watching, but if you've seen it and you have sort of a way that you can, express your thoughts, I'd love to hear them. I don't, just see the film if you're able. That's all I can say.